Don't you remember by John Steckley? Don't you remember? Can you even see when you are sleepwalking? I am trying to remember, officer, but it is difficult. My eyes can see when I sleepwalk, but I am not really very aware of what is around me. My mind generates images that my eyes don't actually see. I once fell down the stairs in my sleep, picked myself up, and headed back to bed. When I awoke, I was quite surprised by the blood on my pillow. My mother wasn't though. She had heard me fall, got up, and apparently she guided me back to bed and washed the first flow of blood from my head. That is what she told me anyway, and I had no reason to not believe her. I must have been able to see. Otherwise, I would not have been able to get back up the stairs without falling again. What do you recall then from your walk in the woods last night? Anything come to mind? I do recall dreaming about running in a race in the track in my old high school. I often dream about that as I was on the track team. Anything other than just that, sir? Well, as I told the other officer on the phone this morning when I heard the news about the little girl that went missing, I do have a picture in my mind of seeing a little girl with very long hair that was a bright red. She looked kind of like a slightly younger version of Anne of Green Gables. I told the other officer that I was not completely sure that was what I saw. My wife and I had recently been on vacation on Prince Edward Island and visited the home of the author of the book, Lucy Maud Montgomery. Now, did you see anyone else standing close to her? Well, officer, this might sound strange, but I think that I saw something that looked a lot like a bear. There are no bears in these woods. Sir, you are a visitor here, I understand, staying at one of the hotels on Main Street. I'm sure that's true, officer. But now that I am putting more thought into that sleepwalking vision, I believe that what I might have been looking at was a fairly big man with a thick brown coat on. Now we are getting somewhere. I will call the little girl's mother to see if she knows such a man. The police officer calls. Ma'am, this is Officer Jenkins. I have been talking with the man who thinks that he saw your daughter last night and called us when he heard the report on the radio. Now this is going to sound like a very strange question, but I want to know whether you know a big man with a brown coat. There is a brief silence as the woman contemplates the question. Well, I used to know a big man, my ex-husband. I don't know about the brown coat though. I never saw him wear one, but we have been separated for 2 years now. Do you know where he lives now, ma'am? I am afraid that I do not know that. We haven't communicated with each other in months. And he was never one to do much in the way of providing information. Well, give us his name and any other information that might prove useful in finding him. His name is Christ Jenkins, but I don't even know his current cell phone number. Okay, ma'am, we'll see what we can find out about him. If you can think of anything else, just give us a call. Back to the sleepwalker. Once his conversation with the police officer was finished, the sleepwalker headed back to his hotel room. He was anxious to tell his wife about how his sighting of the little girl has proceeded. He knew that she would want to know everything. He was also searching through his mind for a reasonably accurate picture of the man who looked like a bear when he first envisioned him. He had no luck in that regard, but he would keep on trying. He and his wife had dinner, the table talk being all about his sleepwalking adventure, his conversation with the police officer, and his still failing attempts to conjure up a clearer image of the man who was a bear. His wife asked some good questions, but he still was a few answers short of being definite. That night he hoped that he would do no more sleepwalking, but there was a restlessness in him that sometimes would be followed by his late-night wandering. Sure enough, not long before midnight, still dressed in his dark blue pajamas, he got up and began the zombie-style walking like he had engaged in the night before. He passed by a few people who stared in dumb wonder but did not say anything, thinking that he was probably drunk or stoned. He went out the back door, as he had the last time. Again, like the previous night, he proceeded through the parking lot, but this time he saw something before he hit the trail to the woods that he had traveled on before. He again spotted the bear, but this time he rapidly changed into the figure of a big man wearing a brown jacket. The man was carrying something in both of his arms. The sleepwalker saw the red hair again. The difference this time was that the shock of sighting both man and child once more woke him up to where his mind saw clearly what his eyes beheld. He turned around sharply, but not before he got a good look at the number on the front license plate of the car, the back seat of which the man was placing the little girl. Then he moved quickly to and through the back door, heading for the reception desk. He took a chance and asked the male receptionist to call 911, but not before he told him, "I have just seen the little girl that disappeared. She is being kidnapped." Fortunately, the receptionist overlooked that the man asking him to do this was in his pajamas and did what he was asked to do. He was new at the job and did not want to anger a guest. The sleepwalker got on the phone and told the officer on the line who he was and that he had seen the kidnapper about to escape, taking the little girl with him. Guided by the license number, the police were soon on the scene and caught up with the man and the child. The radio report the next day said that the man was the girl's father and that she had been rescued with the brave assistance of a tourist staying at a local hotel. No mention was made of his sleepwalking or of his dark blue pajamas. Why is the answer by Tom Brodkin. Are you coming to bed? The voice startled Jay, and instinctively he placed his phone in his pocket before answering. I'll be there in a second. What are you doing up? Jay's question was more of a defense mechanism than a quest for knowledge. He was less concerned as to why Pam was up than that she was up. Do you have a minute? She asked, sitting down before Jay had a chance to answer. I've been thinking. In the decade Jay had been married, I've been thinking was second to only we have to talk in his list of things he didn't want to hear, but experience had taught him there was only one correct answer. Sure, what's on your mind? Do you remember our wedding day? Pam asked. And Pastor Richard? Of course, it was the happiest day of my life, Jay answered. His response was both true and ironic. Pam didn't come from money and Jay barely had a nickel to his name, so the two young lovers had been married on a beach just before sunset. The guests sat in folding chairs they brought themselves, and the altar was nothing more than two tiki torches stuck in the sand at the end of a makeshift aisle. Unable to afford a minister, Jay and Pam had been married by a friend everyone called Pastor Richard. His name was Richard, to be sure, but he was not a pastor, not a trained one at least. He was, however, the type of person who saw truths in life that most people didn't, and there was no one else either Pam or Jay would have wanted to perform the task of joining them in holy matrimony than the unkempt but wise man. Yes, Jay remembered the day and the man, but the memory was no longer a pleasant one. I've been thinking a lot about what he said, Pam continued. He told us that why was not the question, it was the answer. A smile came over Jay's face. He remembered vividly the advice Pastor Richard had given them before they took their vows. He had squatted down in front of the couple and placed two dots in the sand a foot from each other. There had been no rehearsal or even discussion of the ceremony, so both Pam and Jay were surprised with the sight of their friend as he used the only canvas available to him. This dot is you, he said, pointing at the dot on the right and then at Jay. And this one is you, he said, doing the same with the second dot and Pam. The paths of your lives have brought you together, here today, right now, he said as he drew diagonal lines from each dot to a midpoint between the two. You were on separate paths but no longer, now you walk life's path as one. And with that, he drew a single line towards the young couple and stood back up straight. If you want to find the true reward of the oneness you seek today, you'll remember that why is the answer, not the question. Jay remembered how struck he had been by the simple lesson Pastor Richard had taught that day. Life was a path, and he had committed to share his path with Pam the same way she had promised to share hers with him. Pastor Richard had a unique ability to see the truth and to share it, Jay said, smiling at Pam for the first time in what seemed like years. "What made you think of that?" "Honestly, I was thinking more about the warning. Do you remember?" "I do," Jay responded, instantly aware of where the conversation was headed. "He warned us about being halfway in." "It was more than that though," Pam reminded. "He told us to beware of the paths to the side." "I don't think we listened to him that day. I pictured what our life would be, and this reality just doesn't match that picture." Jay instantly knew Pam was right. Pastor Richard had not stopped when he had drawn the Y in the sand. He had squatted back down and started drawing lines off the unified path. "This is you choosing your friends over Pam," he said to Jay as he drew a line out to the right. "And this is you, Pam, siding with your parents rather than with your husband," he said, as he drew a line to the left. "Hobbies, work, and even children can be fatal distractions if you let them," he said as he drew multiple lines to the left and right. "Before you know it, Y is no longer an answer because it's no longer a Y." Jay, who had been looking at the floor, imagining the sandy beach where he had promised to love Pam for the rest of his life, looked up in time to see a single tear fall from his wife's eye. "Is it too late?" Pam asked as she stood up and turned toward the bedroom. "Don't be long. I don't sleep well without you next to me." "No," Jay said, with a certainty even he didn't understand. "No?" Pam asked, turning back towards her husband. "No, it's not too late. I'll be there in a minute." Pam smiled and turned back towards the bedroom as Jay pulled his phone out of his pocket. The text was still there waiting to be sent. "Want to get a drink after work tomorrow?" Jay had allowed pleasant conversation to become flirting, and he had finally asked for her number. He knew the moment he did that he had crossed a line, but trial and circumstance had worn him down. Now, where a lack of focus had dwelled only a few seconds earlier, Jay found clarity. It only took a few seconds to delete the unsent text. "Y is the answer," Jay said softly to himself as he also deleted the contact from his phone and headed where he belonged, to his bed, next to his wife.